Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for World Cup fantasy football. Now, many of you guys will know me from my Fantasy Premier League videos, but for those of you who are here for the World Cup content, my name is Dan, and if you're looking for a mate for your international fantasy journey, I'm your guy. I thought I'd start off with a video on how to play World Cup fantasy. Some of you might think this is a pretty straightforward game, but some of the rules are completely unique and unlike any fantasy game you will have ever played before. And I believe I've seen other content creators trying to explain the rules and actually making a few mistakes in there, and I hope I can potentially fix that. So simply knowing these secret rules will give you a huge advantage over your rivals. So guys, I've got you covered. I'm here to help you succeed at World Cup fantasy. If you're looking for regular advice and tips for the coming month, hit the subscribe button, like the video, and let's smash it together. Let's get started. So there are two ways to play World Cup Fantasy depending on whether you want to play on browser or the mobile app. If you want to play on desktop or on your browser on your mobile phone, head to the official FIFA website, FIFA.com, click on the play button in the top bar and then click on World Cup Fantasy. From here you can click the get started button and begin creating your team. If you want to play on mobile, however, navigate to the App Store for iPhone or Google Play Store for Android. Here you must look for an app named FIFA Plus that looks like this. Once you've downloaded the app, open it up. Right now the fantasy game is being advertised on the app homepage, so you can just click on that. Alternatively, you can click on the menu button, then play, and finally World Cup Fantasy. The great thing about this game is that you don't need to actually create an account until you're done creating the team, so you can kind of have a play around with it first, see if this game is something you're interested in playing, mess about with some players before committing. That's absolutely fine. Now, those of you who have played Fantasy Premier League or any other fantasy football games will probably be pretty familiar with the format of this. Now, on screen, guys, you will see the 15 slots. In each of these slots, you must pick a player that you think will be a great part of your fantasy team, basically. These 15 players will make up your squad. These players will score points for you based on things like goals, assists, clean sheets, and making saves for goalkeepers. Your squad must contain 2 goalkeepers, 5 defenders, 5 midfielders, and 3 forwards. Be careful, though. Each player has been assigned a price between 3 million for the cheap players all the way up to 11.5 million for the most expensive player. You only have 100 million budget to spend, so budget very carefully. It's not possible to have a squad full of Messis, Ronaldos, and Neymars, but this is kind of part of the fun. Pick a few expensive stars and fill the rest of your team with some cheaper options, making sure you look out for any potential bargains to be had. If you're planning on just picking the whole of the Brazil squad for your team, you can think again here too. During the group stages, you can only pick a maximum of 3 players per nation. This does increase in future rounds, but we'll cover that in just a short moment. So these players will score you points during each round of fixtures. A round of fixtures is called a match day, so pick wisely. Once you have picked your 15 players who you think will score a lot of points, you can start arranging them into a starting 11 with 4 substitutes. Only players who end up in your starting 11 will score you points. If a player in your starting 11 doesn't play, a player from your bench will be automatically subbed on, and then between each match day you can switch around your team, moving certain players to the bench and putting others on the field. In World Cup Fantasy, formations will be automatically applied depending on who you choose to put in your starting 11, and you can switch them on and off as you like. If you start with 4 defenders, 3 midfielders, and 3 forwards, for example, then there you have yourself a 4-3-3 formation. If a player from your bench is automatically subbed on, this is going to possibly change your formation for the match day, but don't worry, formations in this game don't really matter too much. What's more important is how you spend your budget in each of the positions. And finally, we need to pick a captain. Your captain score will be doubled each match day, so pick the player you think will score the most points. You can do this by clicking on the player you want to make your captain and then selecting the captain button. Each match day, you'll have a different captain if you like, so you only need to pick your captain for the match day that is about to occur. I've mentioned that players score points based on their performances. The more score you can get from your team, the better. Most of you guys will be familiar with how fantasy football scoring works. If not, feel free to pause and have a real detailed look at all of the scoring actions in full. But no matter what fantasy football games you've played before, there are going to be some notable differences here between the scoring you're used to and the World Cup fantasy scoring. So let's run through a few of the major differences between this game and FPL Fantasy Premier League. So players can only score score a single appearance point, and I can only do that if they play 60 or more minutes. Winning a penalty for your team will score you 2 points. Giving away a penalty is -1 point. Goalkeepers and defenders score huge when they score a goal. Goalkeepers and defenders also lose a point every time they concede a goal after that first initial goal is conceded. Midfielders get a point every time they make 3 tackles, which is great for those CDMs, those defensive midfielders. And midfielders also get a point for every 2 key passes, which is great for those playmakers. Forwards get a point for every 2 shots on target, which is great for those volume shooters. Another minor note is that midfielders and forwards both score the same amount of points for scoring a goal. 5. And then there are also no bonus points in World Cup Fantasy. And aside from all of that, it's pretty familiar stuff. But do familiarize yourself, guys, with these additional rules, because they will make a little bit of a difference with the kind of players you might be choosing in this game compared to some of the other games you may have played before. So I've spoken a little bit about match days, but what are they? In World Cup Fantasy, a match day is a round of point scoring exactly the same as a game week in a Fantasy Premier League. So yeah, what are the match days? What compromises a match day? Well, match day takes place over the period of time where every team who are still in the competition plays once each. So, in the group stage, the first match day will contain all of the fixtures between Sunday the 20th of November and Thursday the 24th of November. By this point, every team has played at least once, well, just once each, right? The second match day will contain all fixtures between Friday the 25th of November and Monday the 28th of November. The third match day will contain the remaining round of group stage games, and then subsequent match days will contain each round of the knockout phase. So, one match day for the round of 16, one match day for the quarterfinals, one match day for the semi-finals, and one match day that contains both the final and the third place playoff game, which is a game that takes place between the losers of the semi-finals. So there's actually going to be 4 games in the semi-finals and 4 games in the final round, the match day 7 as well. So it means, yes, you only get to choose players from 4 teams in those final 2 match days. So yeah, that's a total of 7 match days, 7 rounds of point scoring. Let's move on. In each match day, you'll be able to switch around your team, put different players on the bench and change your captain, but more interestingly, you get to make transfers. Is there a player you put in your original team that you're no longer happy with? Is there a player who really impressed you in the last round and you want that person in your team? No problem, let's make a transfer. You can swap any player in your team for any other player as long as it fits your budget and as long as it fits the maximum amount of players from a certain nation criteria. But your transfers are limited. You can only make a certain amount of transfers each match day without receiving a points penalty, and it works like this. Before the tournament starts, you can make as many transfers as you want. It's unlimited. During the group stage, so for match day 2 and match day 3, you can make 2 transfers in each round. For the round of 16, you can make unlimited transfers. Again, you can make a complete refresh of your squad. For the quarterfinals, you can make 4 transfers. For the semi-finals, you can make 5 transfers, and before the final, you can make another 6 transfers. If you don't use all your transfers, you can carry over a maximum of 1 to the next round, excluding the unlimited transfer rounds. If you have more than 1 spare transfer banked, they will be gone forever, and as soon as we reach the knockout stages, you can't carry spare transfers to the next round at all, so use them or lose them. If you want to go beyond your transfer limit at each round, you can. However, each additional transfer will knock 3 points off your total score, so be careful about making too many extra transfers. And one final note regarding transfers and team composition, I mentioned before that each round you're allowed more players from one single team. That works as follows. So in match day 1, 2 and 3, you are allowed a maximum of 3 players per nation. In match day 4, this goes up to a max of 4. In match day 5, you get 5, 6, you get a max of 6, and in match day 7, you get a max of 8 players per nation. So you really can go all in on one particular team for that final round. Just like in Fantasy Premier League, World Cup Fantasy has some chips to add to the variation of the game. In World Cup Fantasy, these are called boosters. We get 3 of them, and these 3 boosters can only be used once each and can't be cancelled once you have activated them. The first is called the wild card. The wild card allows you to make unlimited transfers for one match day only. It kind of completely decimates that maximum transfers rule. You can do whatever you like and you don't take any minus points hits. And if you decide you just completely hate your team, you want to start over, or you just feel like there's been some fixture swings, you want to refresh your team, use the wild card then. The second is called the 12th man. This booster unlocks a secret 12th starting player slot in your team for 1 round only. In this 12th man slot, you can put in any player that you like. It doesn't matter if you already have the maximum amount of players from their nation already, or if you've run out of budget, select anyone you like and they will score points for your team for this match day. This is great if you notice a strong team has a great fixture and you really want to capitalize on that, but maybe you don't have the budget for it. Maybe you're already maxed out on the amount of players you can have for that team. Now, the final booster is called Power Captain. This booster takes the captain decision out of your hands and ensures you make the best choice. In your entire 15-man squad, during the round you play this booster, this captain's armband will automatically be assigned to your highest scoring player at the end of the round, and that player will score double points. This also suggests that if you bench your highest scoring player, they will be automatically substituted on, presumably for benching your lowest scoring player. Now, this nuance, however, is unclear. It's not stated in the rules, so we don't know for sure, but it does say that even if you've benched a player, it's out of your entire 15-man squad, the player who scores the most points will be captained. Now, this is where the rules get a little bit complicated. Even if the rules as written on the website are not completely clear, but I will try and explain it in as simple terms as possible using some graphics to try and help us out as well. So here's how live substitutions work. If you have a squad of 15 players, you can only play 11. However, if one of your players gets a bad score and you're not happy with it, or maybe that player doesn't play at all, you can swap him out with a player on your bench who hasn't played yet. So as long as the player on your bench hasn't played, you can swap them on. Now, since you have 4 substitutes, you can do this up to 4 times. You can make these substitutions at any point during the match day as long as the player you are substituting in has not played yet. Once a player has been manually substituted off, you cannot bring them back on again under any circumstance. Their points are lost forever, and this decision cannot be reversed. So substitute very carefully. Another note is that if you make a substitution, automatic substitutions no longer take effect, so you will have to do all of your substitutions manually. The best way to take advantage of this rule is to fill your starting 11 with players who play their fixtures earlier on in the match day, and then have the players who play later on in the match day on the bench. That way, if any of your players only get a 0 point, 1 point, or 2 points, you can have that second roll of the dice and switch them out with one of your bench players. For this reason, it is recommended to have a really strong full squad of 15 players. All 15 players are players that you like. Then, if something goes wrong during the round of fixtures, you can just swap a player out for one of your equally strong guys on the bench. It basically gives you 4 second chances to score points if you play this way. This really gives a stick or twist element to the game. If you sub a player out and the replacement scores even less points than the original, that's too bad. You twisted and now you're stuck with the replacement player. So as I said, only use this tactic to switch out players with seriously low scores of 0s, 1s, and 2s. Before I talk about the live captain rule, I want to acknowledge that I know this is not the only interpretation of the rules. I do believe, however, that some other content creators have potentially misunderstood the rules. What I am about to show you is the live captaincy rules as I have interpreted it and what I believe to be the true rules of the game. So, the live captain change rules follows the exact same concept as live substitutions, allowing you to change your mind on who you want to captain throughout the match day. So, you select your captain before the beginning of the match day. However, you can change your mind and actually switch your captain to another player who is yet to play. You can keep doing this every match in sort of a stick or twist fashion until you are happy with the player you have captained. So, for example, on screen, you can see the yellow player here has scored 20 points. So, at this point, you've been doing some captain switches, but at this point, you're going to want to stop switching your captain and stick with the player that you've got captain currently, because it's very unlikely that any subsequent subsequent captain pick will score more than 20 points. Again, switching captains involves risks. Once you've switched your captain, you can't switch back. As long as your player has kind of kicked off in the game, they are no longer eligible to be switched to. So if you forget to switch to a high-scoring player, or you switch captaincy off a high-scoring player, that's too bad. Because they have already kicked off, or their nation has already kicked off, they are no longer eligible to be switched to. Now, a final unique rule in this game is that you can actually make transfers whilst a match day is in progress, following the same rule of as long as the player's nation hasn't played. So, in short, any player whose nation hasn't played yet can be replaced with another player whose nation hasn't played yet. And this is true even in the middle or towards the end of a round of fixtures. So, for example, if everything is going very well in your match day, but a certain match, you find out that one of your chosen players got injured in training that morning, or maybe they have been unexpectedly benched, then it's not too late to fix it. As long as this player's nation's game has not kicked off yet, you can still transfer the player out. Again, you can only replace this player with another player whose nation is yet to kick off. You can't use this rule to be sneaky and remove players with low scores, or, add in players with high scores. That's not possible. These transfers can only be used on players who are yet to have the opportunity to score points. At this moment, it's unclear as to whether these transfers count as transfers for the active round or for the following round. My current assumption is that these transfers count for the active round. With these 3 live rules, this makes World Cup Fantasy a much more immersive and consistent experience. You have to keep making decisions every game, which really rewards the dedicated manager. Now, a lot of players, they are not going to bother with these additional rules. As one, they won't understand these rules, and 2, it makes the game a little bit more time consuming. But if you really want to beat your mates, making live substitutions, captain switches, and transfers in the middle of a match day can be a great way to gain an advantage in the game. I know these rules are kind of complicated. I know some of you guys will now understand how it works, but if you don't fully get it, please feel free to leave a comment and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have. And we're also going to do a part 2 of this video where we will explore some more advanced tactics on how to take full advantage of the complex rules of World Cup Fantasy. So make sure you are subscribed, make sure you have got those notifications on if you want to be notified when part 2 comes out, if you're ready for the advanced rules, the advanced section, the advanced strategies and tactics you can use in World Cup Fantasy. But for now, guys, that is going to be it. So if you did find this helpful, please do like the video. And if you want to share this video with your friends who you want to introduce to the game of World Cup Fantasy as well, to give them a real introduction on the full rules of how to play this game, please do. Like I say, if you have any questions around the rules or how to play or anything like that, please do leave a comment. I will be making sure I am reading all of the comments and answering any questions that you guys have. So stick them in there. And hopefully you guys will stick with me for some more fantasy content, really, because I'm quite looking forward to getting started with World Cup Fantasy. It's always very exciting, and for us dedicated managers, we always do very well as well. It is really tailored to us guys. So there we go, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you guys in part 2, the Advanced World Cup Fantasy Strategy Guide. See you later, mates. Bye-bye.